What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us, presumably not including me, might not guess.
Um, I don't know. I already talked about the terrible sense of direction, and I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which I imagine would be very surprising to a lot of people based on how I look and talk and so on. So yeah.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us might not guess who don't know you?
Oh, where do you come up with these questions? Hmm. Yeah, so maybe because we already talked about this religion thing, it's I actually very interested in religion, and so even though I became an atheist in college, I say I'm an atheist. I'm not an anti-theist. Um, so I think religion has actually done a lot of good things for the world, and it took me a while to readjust my, what really matters in life, right? It's not money, it's not, fame or whatever. It's something deeper about that you feel like you're contributing to the human condition or something like that. So even though I'm a strong atheist and have no belief in God, one time Ben Kuipers and I had a debate about AI and religion a number of years ago that was really a fun meeting to talk about. But I mentioned this phrase, I said, I think the probability that God exists is 10 to the minus Google. And then there are some people arguing that, oh, well, then you're not an atheist because you don't think it's zero or something like that. And I'm going, this is not a meaningful definition of being an atheist. But yeah, so it might be surprising to some people that I actually care very deeply about religious things in general. And, how do we drive our lives by deeper things rather, but I don't see why we need to bring in supernatural mumbo jumbo into that discussion. But I actually do care very deeply about, moral issues and these sort of deeper spiritual issues about feeling like you're making a contribution rather than it being about money or fame. I don't know if that would be surprising to people or not.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us may not guess?
One thing is that I have been to Trinidad Carnival 3 times. And, this is like the big, spend a couple of days just kind of like walking the streets in Trinidad, and kind of there's big music trucks and fancy outfits and whatnot. So maybe that.
Okay. What was that like?
Honestly, it's really hot. It's the thing that surprises me is just how physically demanding it is to be kind of like out on the pavement in the hot sun for 10 hours at a time or something.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us may not guess?
I guess being transparent makes it a bit difficult for people to be surprised.
True.
Yeah. Let me see. Yeah, not really. Nothing that people would find surprising. Oh, I mean, the one possible thing that people might find surprising is that I'm actually a great. I can cook steak like amazingly well. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I can really cook it well. And then everyone that I have invited over and then cooked steak during the past 1 year, every single one of them praised my steak. So that one, I think that could be a bit surprising. Yes.
Yeah.
And also, I guess another surprising thing is that I actually own a printer plus scanner. So a lot of people actually just stop by at my place to use the scanner. And in particular, it's gotten worse or better since the university started to restrict the people coming into the offices and so on. So yeah, I mean, I think that could be one thing that is surprising and also very useful information for people who live in New York City. So,
Yeah. I did not realize the value of printers till
yeah,
I just got
exactly,
locked in
right.
at home. Yeah.
Precisely, yes.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us might not guess?
Something surprising about me. Yeah, that's actually there's nothing really surprising about me. So I live on a straight line. So by that I mean you can easily predict my next moves, my next attempts and so on. And the slope of the line is between 0 and 1. So there you don't see like much change at fixed intervals. So that's even, for example, if yeah, I'm a predictable person. For example, when we go to restaurants with friends and colleagues and so on, so they can easily predict what I will order there, even if it's the first time that we go to that restaurant. So that I'm that predictable. But, so the thing that might be surprising to people, I'm into like supercars, and I drive supercars, so that's one thing that that people might not know about me. Yeah.
Fascinating. Can you say more for starting with what are supercars?
Okay, so what are supercars? So supercars are yeah, the 0 to 60 is usually less than 4 seconds. So that's considered supercar.
I see.
And
And I can tell you right now that you are certainly wrong in that there's nothing surprising about you. That was highly surprising. I would not have guessed. So what supercar are you driving?
So I drove this. I mean, the last car I had was BMW i8, and yeah, the lease finished now. I'm doing research for my next car, and so that's what I drove. Yeah.
Fascinating. And you find that you were able to make use of the capabilities of these cars to go from 0 to 60 in less than 4 seconds.
Yeah, yes. So, yeah, but some of my friends, yeah, you're tell me you're wasting this car. It's not you are not using it right. So you have to do you have to drive. Yeah, you don't do crazy driving and so on. So, yeah, but yeah, I don't use it well, but I try to
Nice.
use as much of it.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us might not guess?
I don't know why this is coming to my mind. It's like very random, but in high school, I played like co-ed varsity roller hockey.
Fascinating. And pardon the ignorance on the behalf of an immigrant. I don't understand. Like, is there physical contact in this sport?
Yes, we had to wear full pads. Like, you know, it's like the way people would dress for American football, even more pads than that. And you normally, if you didn't grow up in San Diego where it's warm, this would be ice hockey. It's basically a similar thing. The only difference is the puck is a little lighter because, you know, friction.
And so I suppose you were engaged in physical checks and body checks as well.
Yes.
All right, that's pretty surprising given what I know about you.
Yes.
All right.
I wouldn't say I was amazing at it, but it was fun.
Yeah. Think you could still do it?
I love skating, so that was part of the fun. And actually wearing the pads was awesome because you could basically take a dive, like, and you don't really feel it. So
nice. What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us may not guess?
Oh, yeah, you all know I'm a ski fanatic. My grandmother was a movie star,
Wow.
That's in the 40s. So, she played with Rock Hudson and James Mason and Stuart Granger and these people. You notice that actresses in the 40s are named by the men they played with. So this is, an accident of the time. But
Yeah.
uh,
What
that's-
kinds of movies was she in?
I think there was pretty standard career trajectory then, of like, you work on the stage. She was in Dublin, I'm from Ireland. And you kind of do the running style of movies. So there's one about Christopher Columbus. There was one about Captain Boycott, the Irish landowner who gives us the term boycott. And then
I
there was
did
some
not know
really,
that.
there you go. And there was some really interesting ones. There was one called Odd Man Out, which is a movie, people will know it, which is about the IRA, the sort of 1940s sort of civil war in Northern Ireland, and that's an interesting portrayal. And she's also in one of the few. I quite like a really dark, sad movie. I'm kind of keen on that. But she's in one that's so dark and sad that I've never been able to see to the end of it, which is by Edgar Dmytryk, one of the early McCarthy sufferers. And that is just dismal life in New York in the Depression. So a range of stuff.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us may not guess?
Oh, how my accent changes to very heavy Greek when I'm around Greek people. I think that you've commented on this before.
Yeah.
Okay, no, okay, that was a joke. Something surprising about me.
The code switching thing and the accent thing is a phenomenon, not just with
Yes.
people, but it's a common thing. Like I've seen that. I'm sure that happens to me as well, although I can't recall specific instances. But I know that there are certain friends from undergrads, for example, when I'll talk to them, it was an undergrad college in a particular part of India, and like I know how people from that region talk, and like I find myself almost switching to a different accent. So it's very real.
No, it's very real. It's very real. Though it is, I think that a lot of people around me have, or that are surprised by this very often when they see it. And of course I pointed out because it's different. But so I guess I don't know. Because I don't find anything. I haven't figured out anything about me that I'm surprised with.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us may not guess?
That's a tough one. What is something surprising about me? Man, I'm sad. I can't think of anything surprising about me.
Well, it's either that, or it could be because your model of whoever is finding this surprising is that they understand you enough that they shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking of someone who knows me. What's surprising for them?
Yeah, maybe someone who doesn't quite know you personally. Maybe they know you as a researcher at FAIR, a PhD from like someone who knows you professionally. What would they be surprised about?
Well, I talk a lot. You don't. Is that not surprising? It's not.
I don't think you talk a lot. Like.
Okay. Let me think. Sorry. What is surprising about me? Sleep 10 hours a day.
Okay, that would put you in an outlier situation. I think most Americans get seven-ish. Like
crazy. Yeah, I sleep like 9 to 10 hours a day.
Good for you. I'm sure there's like doctors that are feeling good about at least someone following that advice.
Yeah, I feel like if I have a busy day and like I'm eating dinner and I'm going to bed now, don't care about anything else. Yeah, so I do sleep. I also watch all movies at 2x, 1.5x to 2x. That's how I watch the old Humans of AI videos.
Okay, everything, all movies, or everything that you typically get.
Well, if I watch it with my husband, he doesn't let me watch it at 1.5x. But yes, if I'm watching anything by myself, I watch it better. Yeah.
Okay. For situations where you're watching someone who you may then ultimately meet, do you just find them to be annoyingly slow in real time?
Yeah, this used to happen in the past. So I was watching a lot of movies at 1.5x in undergrad to save time. And then I would go for food like in the cafeteria and I would be like, oh God, why is everyone so slow? Move faster, faster. Yes.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us may not guess?
That I have trouble talking to strangers. So, I mean, so it's basically, I think, for example, if I go to a conference, I used to hate going to conferences because I'm not one of those people who can just go talk to somebody. It would take me humongous amount of internal dialogue to kind of go talk to somebody. Now it doesn't matter because I've lived long enough. I know lots of people, so I will still be able to talk to them, all that stuff. But given that if you put me on a stage, I come across as somebody who doesn't have stage fear of any kind, stage fright of any kind, which I don't, honestly. In the sense that I know how to manage that very well. But this sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier. This idea of schmoozing is just foreign to me. I just don't know how to schmooze. Like general idle chit chat is something that comes easy for many people. It's not easy for me. And so that could be surprising for my students, even the students in the class, that they would find that I'm doing all this, pretty breezy lectures and everything. But when they come one-on-one, it's not necessary that they would be, it may well be somewhat awkward and stilted in the beginning before I get to know them. So I think that might be surprising, but certainly it's surprising for some of the people that, that look at us. Yeah.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us may not guess?
This is what I tell my undergrads, I suppose. I used to be a metalhead in high school and a goth, and I used to wear not quite corpse paint, but I wore, heavy makeup and black lipstick and all that. And I still listen to the same kind of music. I just don't dress the part. So I'm not sure if that's surprising.
I think for someone in your professional position, I would think that is certainly an outlier, or at least a low probability event.
Sure, yeah. But I've considered having mosh pit backgrounds in Zoom and having band posters in my office. I think I'll do that after tenure, probably.
What kind of bands?
Metal bands and grunge bands. I guess those would be the two. I'm stuck in the past, I suppose. The only way I think I just don't have the energy to be discovering recent music. So what I do is I discover music that I didn't know from the Seattle 90s era, which is still good because there are all these bands I discovered that I didn't know about. They just happen to be 30 years old and, some of their members are dead. So that's okay. I'm okay with that. Yeah,
it just means that there's a finiteness to the records. Right. It means, yeah,
right.
The new stuff can't disappoint you.
It's true, but when I have more energy, I'll look at the more recent stuff again. There's there's one recent band I remember liking, but that was like 5 years ago. So I need to regain my my strength for discovering new stuff. Discovering new stuff and opening yourself up for liking stuff that you're not familiar with. I think is not that easy for me. Same goes for food and I guess other stuff.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us may not guess, besides fishing at this point?
Yeah, that's kind of surprising. I don't know. I mean, I'm I have unusual hobbies and habits. So there's like I am fairly obsessive about wine in the sense that I have a wine collection. It's another hobby of mine. That's not maybe as unusual about fishing. I've right in here is my wine collection.
Oh wow, that's a big door.
Oh, it's a small wine. It's a small.
Okay.
It's a door into a closet, basically.
Okay.
A temperature-controlled closet. But I also happen to have a worm farm in there for my fishing, so that's might be surprising and unusual. What else? I do play around with archery a little bit. That's what this is here.
Archery.
Yeah. I'm not. I am let's say very much a hobbyist in this regard. Like I just sort of putter around with it. Yeah. Someday I might get more serious, but for now it's just a puttering around thing.
And I understand you own a machete.
Yes. How'd you hear about that? I actually have to.
It's
oh
right
yeah,
there.
well, yeah. Yeah. I just happen to have it handy.
Why?
Nothing I always put around.
Okay, that is. Why do you have it so handy?
Well, we just happen to be in my this is my workshop. Like I don't have an office. When we built our house, we didn't design it for COVID. So Joelle takes one of our son's rooms for her office during the day, and I'm just literally in my workshop. So this is just stuff I have in the workshop like that. The bow is just here because there's no place else for it. Yeah. So
okay. Yeah, I think those are plenty surprising things.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us, perhaps who know you from a professional context, may not guess?
Yeah, let's see. I'm not sure I'm that surprising. One thing that comes to mind is that I think a lot of people in science come from kind of families that have some sort of STEM or technical background. My parents are both writers. My mom's a fiction writer and a journalist, and my dad is a film writer. And so I was always interested in NLP because I'm interested in language, kind of first and foremost. And the fact that I ended up working in machine learning was really like driven by the fact that I'm just super interested in writing and how writing works and language and arguments and things like that. So these days, most of my papers are pretty mathematical, but I think that was the original motivation.
Fascinating. Do you end up having family conversations about discourse and whether AI systems can ever truly understand the meaning of language?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, I think in some ways, when I was young, that was always interesting to me, but writing as a profession is so interesting, and it's so much more interesting in some ways than what AI can talk about these days, that the conversation tends not to be that interesting. Like I'm not sure we have that much to say to someone who's a master of this craft. It feels like we're still at like third grade level of understanding. So I don't really aspire to do that or interact in that way. But I think my dad is he's very interested in kind of questions of like how film and technology interact and how narrative in that sense would interact with, say, computer vision. So we sometimes talk about that. Yeah.
Interesting. What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us who perhaps only know you from a professional context may not guess?
Yeah, so you hinted at this earlier. I actually hate public speaking tremendously. I get like physical symptoms of anxiety and stage fright. Like I'll get sweaty, my stomach will hurt, and I'll feel sick. Like every time, like before a lecture, it's a deep breath, and then you go. And at conferences, it's way worse. And part of this is just like my baseline anxiety, and the other part is imposter syndrome and things like this. But I think the tricky thing is in presentations, I come off generally charismatic and fine. But it's a nightmare every time.
Yeah, I remember Choral 19. I think you won the best, one of the best speaker awards. Runner up. Okay. And I just remember before that talk, you were just physically uncomfortable.
It was the worst. Yeah, I don't like it. I like that students give more talks now. Like I have to do workshop stuff, but the audience of that is narrower, and I generally know who they are, which helps.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us who perhaps only know you from a professional context may not guess?
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what's surprising? I've done quite a lot of meditation and yoga. So I did this Vipassana retreat where you're silent for 10 days. Why did I do that? I was having quite a lot of anxiety. So, I guess it's not that unusual. I'm sure it's totally not that unusual amongst us sort of researchers, but I get very anxious, and that can lead me to feel depressed at times. So doing things like meditation was really helpful for that, as is doing things like sport and stuff like that. So keeping that going during this lockdown period is very important. So yeah, I guess those things might be a bit surprising if people thought, because I'm quite an extrovert and relatively confident on the outside, so maybe that is a surprise. And something I'm relatively happy to talk about also, because at least for me, those sorts of issues, it's helpful to hear other people talk about those issues is helpful to me. So hopefully this will be helpful to someone else. Yeah, interesting. I've heard about Vipassana growing up, and the 7-day or the 10-day. There are different length stays that you can make. I've never done those. I've imagined what it would be like, but I don't think I have a good idea that I can even imagine just not talking to anyone, no access to any technology, book, nothing. That must have been different, very different. Yeah, so I would say that I did it before I went to grad school in a sort of a little gap after my sort of initial career. So I didn't slot it into an otherwise very busy life. I kind of did it over a period of being in India for a month and generally not working. So that probably made it easier. I wouldn't say it was easy. It definitely wasn't easy. It was very boring, but I saw it as a challenge. And by the end, I felt incredible. I really did feel for the next 3 months after that, I felt really peaceful, relatively, and really nice. Anyway, Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, he does it once a year now. So I think that going from a busy job to just doing that straight away and then back to the busy job, that must be really challenging. Yeah, but I would recommend it. I think it helped me a lot. And the technique in those 10 days, I think you learn some nice techniques for meditation that you can always use. So it's kind of like an investment in the future. I've done shorter retreats since then, but I'd actually probably be a bit nervous to go back and do the full 10 days, but maybe one day I will.
What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us who may know you from a professional context may not be able to guess?
Oh, so I'm an atheist, but many people who will see me with a beard and a turban sort of might think that I'm particularly religious, but in fact I'm not. I'm somewhere maybe between an agnostic and an atheist.
Yeah, I can imagine that can be quite surprising for a large percentage of population of the world. I've grown up with friends who were Sikhs, but culturally practicing, yeah, perhaps not in the same spiritual sense. And so I personally don't find that surprising, but I can see how that would be surprising.
Yeah.
What is something surprising about you that the rest of us maybe who only know you from a professional context or who only know about your professional accomplishments may not guess?
That's a hard question to answer, because to me, nothing's surprising about me.
Well, yes, under your model of you.
Exactly, right? So it's hard to evaluate that function, you know? In fact, AI researchers have tried to formalize the notion of surprise, and it's hard because it's really about having a mental model for other people's mental model. And so anyway, I digress. Something surprising about me, I think, I would say, you know, I'm generally, so if I step back, you know, the reason again, let's keep this geeky piece going.
Please.
The reason personalization works is that we're not as idiosyncratic as we think we are. That there's a lot of commonality between people, and in some ways, I'm a stereotype. You know, I talked about, you know, the outdoors, and I drive a Subaru. When I drive, I hate driving, but and you know, we eat organic food or whatever it is, right? So I am a complete you know, pseudo intellectual liberal stereotype in all sorts of ways. And so, you know, the answer to something surprising, it's kind of hard. I mean, I have like interests. I have interests in art, for example. They're maybe a little bit more unusual for some folks in my field. But I don't know if that's necessarily surprising, but it's something that I have had a passion for many years. I've had a relatively complicated life, given, you know, where I was born and how things evolved over the years. But again, that's kind of everybody has a life story. I think mine is not linear in this way, but again, I don't know if it falls into the surprising category. But one small thing that's a little geeky that I'll add is when I was trying to figure out what to study for undergrad, I had a lot of doubts and a lot of interest, and so I had this huge list of possibilities. I was like, you know, am I going to become an artist? Oceanography was on the list.
Oceanography.
I watched like Perry Mason on TV, so maybe I should be a lawyer, you know, all sorts of things. But I read a lot of sci-fi, and that goes back to the stereotype. And I said, oh, maybe I want to build robots. So I thought to myself, okay, I want to build robots. What should I study? Mechanical engineering, obviously. And so my undergrad is in mechanical engineering, until I kind of realized that one of the challenges of building a robot is the brain of the robot, and that was kind of much later. But in a small, and this was in Brazil as an undergrad, and a small kind of side story. I'm avoiding obviously the surprising question here, but I was doing this undergraduate thesis, and I saw an ad in my university for a position at Carnegie Mellon to be a programmer. It was somebody who was a grad student at Carnegie Mellon, had studied at the university. They couldn't find a programmer for this NASA sponsored project, so they sent an ad out for a master's student, and I had my undergrad, not a master's, and they were required a master's, but I applied, and it turned out that my undergraduate thesis project was following on the work of the advisor of the student. and it was exactly what they needed for this project. So somehow they decided to hire me instead of like a master's student. So that was a great thing. So I had this offer to become a programmer at Carnegie Mellon research program. And I was like, what is Carnegie Mellon University? I mean, what's Stanford? I didn't know anything. And so my dad, who lives in Canada, was working for a telecom company. And so he sent an email maybe to all, it's like this pretty big company. I don't know if it's like all at Mitel or so, I don't know, he sent saying, my son got this offer for a position at Carnegie Mellon. Is that a good school? And and you know, then he got a bunch of replies back. This was a 96 or so. People were nicer in the internet at the time. Got a lot of replies like, oh yeah, of course, a good school, what a great opportunity. And so I ended up going to Pittsburgh for a year to see him. And that was one of those things that made a huge difference in my life. But before that, my plan was my university in Brazil and one in Japan, in Tokyo, had an agreement. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go to grad school in Japan. That's what I thought I was going to do with my life at that point. And so
wow.
There you go.
Did you speak Japanese?
Not at all.
Okay, you were just going to pick it up.
I thought, you know, I'm an optimist, so I thought, no problem. But yeah, they offered you scholarships to go to, if you got in. But obviously, I thought, who else will get in if not me, right? But there you go. That's so I don't have anything surprising to say.
No, I think
I can talk for a while.
I think the fact that in alternative sampling of the universe, you maybe have gotten a degree from Japan, and that's pretty. Or
being an oceanographer, or a lawyer or something. I don't know. Those are some samplings there.
Yeah, they're pretty high variance samples. Getting to the definition of surprise.
Yeah, the way I say it is, if the computer science thing doesn't work, art was going to be my backup plan. That's kind of how I approached it.
Maybe you can combine both those interests now with NFTs.
Well, yeah, right, that too. But Osman Khan was a professor at Carnegie Mellon in the art department when I was there, and I taught a class around, you might remember this.
Yeah,
around 2007 or something.
Yep, I remember
that we called Art That Learns, where we built art installations using machine learning. That was my attempt to combine the two.
I remember that. What is something surprising about you? Something that the rest of us who know you from perhaps a professional context may not guess?
Oh yeah, I was very quiet and shy, and I'm actually very much an introvert. And when I was doing PhD, I was like a furniture in the room. You may or may not notice that I'm there. And then this new job requires me to speak quite a bit, so I became better at it. And in some sense, I feel like I discovered the true me in me that was there, but somehow it was culturally suppressed beforehand. But when I mentioned this, especially students get very surprised, especially the shy ones get surprised. Really?